sometimes needs a little persuasion to eat fruit. This next recipe is another one that works really, really well on them. So to make our apple crisp squares, we're going to start by making the crumble crust that you normally associate with being on top of an apple crisp. So we're going to combine some all-purpose flour. It's easy to remember this recipe because it's 3/4 of a cup of everything. Those are just regular rolled oats, not instant, but the regular minute oats, and some brown sugar. And then we've got equal parts of baking soda and baking powder that we're going to sprinkle in. You can see I left a little sugar behind. We'll get that out. And I'm just going to stir this to break up any clumps of brown sugar that are in there. If you have any that are really persistent, you can just reach in with your fingers. The disadvantage of leaving the clumps is that they kind of melt in a lump in your dish, and you can have sort of gooey spots that don't bake evenly. All right, that's looking pretty good to me. Just a few last lumps to flatten with my spoon here. Now I'm going to add in some slivered almonds. I like them for the bit of extra crunch, and also it's some protein in the dish. If you don't prefer almonds or you need to make it nut-free, you can obviously omit them and it won't affect the texture in any way. Whoops. Now we're going to stir those in. And last but not least, we need something to help it hold together. So I've got 1/2 cup of melted butter here. Just going to drizzle that in. And like lots of baked goods, these freeze really well. So it's great to have a batch tucked away, and then you can just pull out a couple to tuck into a lunchbox or for a grab and go breakfast. It's a little more sugar than I might ordinarily offer for breakfast, but in a pinch, it's better than a commercial granola bar. And that's sort of what they remind me of. And my goal here now is to stir just enough so that everything gets softened and moistened with the butter. You don't want to have any dry bits in the bottom. For this recipe, I sometimes make a batch of this crumble mixture and just tuck it in the freezer. And then when I want to make the squares in a hurry, this part's already done. And it just needs a couple of minutes to thaw before you can proceed with the recipe. Okay, I'm happy with that. So now we're going to put the bottom crust in our prepared pan. And you'll notice that my parchment paper is all wrinkly. I actually crumpled it up in a ball, ran it under hot water, and shook the water off, and then it made it very pliable to pop into my pan. I did this earlier this morning, and it holds the shape of the pan, so much better than trying to pleat and fold it to get it to stay. So 1/2 of the mixture's going in, and you just have to eyeball it. It doesn't have to be exact. And now I'm going to press that down to form my bottom crust. And just make sure you get into the corners. I think I can take one more scoop here. There we go. 1.5. And the reason for pressing it firmly is you want a crust that is robust enough to hold up the apple layer and the crumble topping. And I'm just trying to get right into the corners too. All right, our crust is ready. I'm going to pop this in the oven for about 10 to 12 minutes until it has puffed a little bit and is nice and golden brown. All right, I've taken the crust out of the oven. It looks golden and perfect and nicely puffed. So now we're going to make the apple layer that goes on top of that. So again, I have my favorite Gala apple just because that's what I really like. And for this recipe, we are going to peel the apple because we want it to soften thoroughly in between the 2 layers of crumble. And you want about 1.5 cups of apple, so that's equivalent to 1 large apple. Obviously you can use 2 smaller ones if need be. There isn't really a need to measure it though. And again, I've got just a couple of little coarse bits from the core, so we'll pop those out. And you want to dice this fairly finely. The smaller the pieces are, the faster they'll cook. All right, there's our apple all set. Now we want to add some things in to not only enhance the apple flavor, but also to encourage it to get nice and soft while it's cooking. So we've got some lemon juice here, about 2 tablespoons. And some white sugar, I think that's about 3 tablespoons. Cinnamon, because that's what I love with apples. You could switch it up with ginger or nutmeg if you prefer. A little bit of flour to help it thicken as it releases juices. We'll give that a stir. Make sure that all the apples are coated. And finally, we're going to add in a little bit of melted butter. This has just solidified a little, so I'm going to sprinkle it on instead of pouring. You could use a little bit of coconut oil if you didn't want butter in this. I haven't experimented with making the crust without butter, but I'm sure that if that's something you're used to doing, you could figure it out no problem. All right, there's our yummy apple layer. So now we're going to put it on top of the base. And you just want to distribute it fairly evenly. It's nice if you don't have big bare spots without fruit. And make sure you scrape the bowl out well so you don't leave any of the good stuff behind. There we go. And I'm just gonna move these around a little bit, like I said, to get that nice even coverage. That's a good looking layer of apples there. All right. And now we're gonna take our reserved crumble topping. Just gonna give it a stir. And then we're going to sprinkle that on top. I find this easiest to do with my fingers so that I can get into the corners and all the edges. And because of the butter in it, it's going to, the butter will melt. Work to draw all the ingredients together, and you'll have a nice solid top layer. There we go, nice even coverage on top. So this is going to go back into the oven for about, I would say 25 minutes or so. That's how long it's going to take for the apples to soften. In the meantime, let me show you what it looks like when it comes out of the oven. Here is the finished product, and oh my goodness, don't these look great. The apples in there with the cinnamon and so on, and you can see how easy it would be to just package these up and make someone's day by popping one of these into their lunchbox. While it can be tempting to make the same things all the time for lunch, I think you'll find that if you shake up your lunchtime routine, you're going to have great days every day. I encourage you to try these delicious fruit salad rice paper wraps, zucchini pizza boats, and apple crisp squares to make your midday meals a little bit more fun.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.
know how amazing moms are, and just in time for Mother's Day, here's an opportunity to tell us how great she is and make her eligible to receive an exclusive makeover package. Just send us a few sentences telling us why your mom is so special and why she deserves a free professional makeover. The winner will receive an incredible makeover prize pack consisting of makeup and hair care services courtesy of Bruno Racine's Salon and L.A. Barrett. They have both worked with some of the biggest stars in North America.
This is Rogers TV.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers Cable or Rogers TV.
Hey foodies, thanks for watching. Today we're making donuts. Donut or donut? I do not know, but whichever way you spell it, it's always good to sink your teeth into those sweet treats. And today just happens to be Donut Day. Well, let's be honest, Donut Day should be every day. They're so good. I find that they hit that spot when you're craving something sweet. And for me, I can't just pop by the local coffee shop to grab my favorite donut. So I wanted to make some today, and when you sink your teeth into these tasty, soft, and fluffy baked donuts, you're sure going to want to have more than just one. But let's be honest, donuts don't necessarily have a good rap. They're basically deep fried. Sure, deep frying makes things taste really good, but baking a donut can make your sweet temptation a little bit healthier. And it's not that hard to do. You just need a slightly different recipe to bake your donut. I've searched the internet for that perfect recipe, and there are lots. They're all the same, and they're all different. I've taken my knowledge of gluten-free baking and used the bits and bobs from different recipes to make this great gluten-free donut recipe. So follow along with me as we bake a gluten-free baked donut. And I want to start by mixing all of my dry ingredients. And today I'm using Frankie's gluten-free all-purpose flour, and it's a great gluten-free all-purpose flour because I can use it cup for cup with pretty much any other regular gluten-based recipe to mimic the results, but it makes it gluten-free. And I'm gonna add my sugar and my salt. I do need to add a little bit more xanthan gum, and that's because I need a little bit more stretch and elasticity when I'm making the donuts, because donuts need to be that extra fluffy and stretchy. I'm gonna add yeast and baking powder. And I'm gonna grab a whisk, and I'm gonna mix this up. Easy peasy. So I'm gonna take my flour bowl that I used, and I'm just gonna drop my eggs in there, and my butter, and my vanilla. And I'm just gonna mix these up just to combine all of those, and then I'm gonna add it to my dry ingredients. Okay. And then I'm gonna mix this up. And I'm probably going to need to switch to my spatula. So we've combined that, and I want to add some nice warm milk. You can use a dairy alternative like almond or soy or oat milk. No problem. And we'll just keep mixing. You can see it's all coming together quite nicely. There we go. It's all mixed up. I'm going to cover this with a bit of plastic wrap. I'm just going to go right down on top of it. And I'm going to refrigerate this for about 30 minutes just to let the gluten-free flour absorb all that moisture to make it a little bit drier. See you in a moment. It's been 30 minutes. It's just come out of the fridge. It's still warm from the warm milk that we've used. And I can actually touch it now and it doesn't stick to my fingers, which I'm really happy about. I'm going to lightly flour my work surface here. And I'm going to bring this out. That looks really nice. And I'm just gonna lightly work it just so that it doesn't stick to my fingers. You can see right here it's sticking just a little tiny bit. So I just want a little bit more flour just to keep it from sticking. But I don't want to over flour it because I want it to be nice and fluffy. So I'm going to lightly roll it to about 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch in thickness. So that's it right there. And I've got a parchment paper lined baking sheet, and I've got about a 5 centimeter or 2 inch, 2.5 inch, 7 centimeter cookie cutter, and I'm just going to cut circles, and I'm going to place them right on the cookie sheet. So I'll do another one. Oh, these look great. And I'm going to space them so that there's enough room for them to rise and expand a little bit. These look great. They smell amazing. Oh my God. I can't wait to sink my teeth into these. Okay, and I'm just gonna ball the dough up again. And I'm gonna roll it out. What's really nice about making gluten-free things is you don't have to worry so much about the dough getting tough or hard because it's gluten-free. There's no gluten to develop, so it's not gonna get tough and hard. I mean, there are some benefits to baking gluten-free, and that is definitely one of them. So again, I'm gonna roll it to about 2.5 centimeters, 1 inch, and I'm gonna cut it out. There's one. I think I can squeeze just enough out of that. There we go. I'm gonna set these. And I think I've got enough for at least 1, maybe 2 more donuts. Roll it out so it's a little bit more even. There's that. Look at how nice that is. Like, it's just beautiful. I'll bring this over here so we can just take a look. And then that's 2, 4, 6. That's 8 donuts. I don't think we're gonna get a larger donut here. No, I don't think we're gonna get even a half a donut. So that's just gonna go. So
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Audio test 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Audio test 2, 1, 2, 3.
Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. We are experiencing some audio problems, so we're going to be a few more minutes before we get started. Thank you for your patience. Merci. Okay, apparently we are ready to get started, so we'll start in about 1 minute. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Bienvenue. As we begin our meeting today, and on behalf of Ottawa City Council, I wish to acknowledge that Ottawa is built on unceded Anishinaabe-Algonquin territory. The peoples of the Anishinaabe-Algonquin Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. The City of Ottawa honors the peoples and land of the Anishinaabe-Algonquin Nation and honors all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. For those who are able, please rise for a moment of personal reflection. Thank you. Merci. Please remain standing if you're able, and I will ask Councillor Hughley now to introduce the performer of our national anthem today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and council colleagues, senior leadership team, city staff, and guests. I'm very excited to introduce to you Marleya McLeod, an 18-year-old artist from my ward who has a vibrant mix of musical talents and a dash of Jamaican roots. Currently starring as Dorothy in Orpheus' Wizard of Oz, Marleya is a singer, songwriter, musician, performer, entertainer, and accomplished producer whose prowess shines in her latest release, the 5th album called Sugarcane, available across all major platforms. Her musical journey began early, producing her first indie EP at just 11 years old, and she has graced the stage of the iconic venues like the world-famous Apollo. I hope I said that right. Festival, Capital Pride, and the Ottawa Children's Festival. All of this is possible because of the proud parents who are with us today as well that have supported her journey along the way. She's known best as Miss McLeod on stage and
l'épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you very much for that amazing performance. Well done. I will now ask the council coordinator to do the roll call, please.
Councillor Luloff.
Present?
Councillor Dudas. Councillor Hill.
Present.
Councillor Curry.
Here.
Councillor Kelly.
Present.
Councillor Gower.
Here.
Councillor Kavanagh.
Present.
Councillor Johnson.
Here.
Councillor Devine.
Here.
Councillor Bradley.
Here.
Councillor Tierney.
Present.
Councillor Plant.
Ici.
Councillor King.
Here.
Councillor Troster.
Here.
Councillor Leeper.
Here.
Councillor Brockington.
Here.
Councillor Menard.
Here.
Councillor Carr.
Here.
Councillor Kitts.
Here.
Councillor DeRuse.
Here.
Councillor Brown.
Here.
Councillor DeRush.
Here.
Councillor Hubley.
Here.
Councillor Lowe.
Present.
Mayor Sutcliffe.
Here.
You have quorum, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Confirmation of minutes from the council meeting of April 17th and the in-camera minutes on April 17th as well. Are the minutes carried? Are there any declarations of interest? I'll note the communications received on the agenda. There were no regrets that were filed. Motion to introduce reports. Councillor Bradley?
That the Community Service Committee Report 9, Environment and Climate Change Committee Report 10, Planning and Housing Committee Report 26, and the report from the City Clerk entitled Summary of Oral and Written Public Submissions for Items Subject to the Planning Act Explanation Requirements at the City Council meeting of April 17th, 2024 be received and considered.
Is that carried? Item 10.1 is the Mooney Bay Park Hill. I know there are questions about that, so we'll hold that. Environment and Climate Change Committee Report 10. Item 11.1 is the Residential Stormwater Retrofit Pilot Program, Rain Ready Ottawa. Is that carried? Planning and Housing Committee, item 12.1 is the zoning bylaw amendment for 1166 Bank Street. Is that carried? Item 12.2 is the Riverside South Secondary Plan. Is there a technical amendment for that or not? Was there not?
No, Mr. Mayor, it's
Okay.
confirmed as what none is not required.
Okay, is that carried? Item 12.3 is Councillor Troster's motion on renovictions. I know there's some comments and questions on that, so we'll hold that item. And the bulk consent agenda, is that carried? Okay. Going back to item 10.1, the Mooney Bay Park Hill. I know that some councillors had some questions about that, so please raise your hand. Okay. Councillor Hubley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a question to staff with this proposal. I know when it came to committee, it was $250,000 for the study, and what was passed was $150,000. But I didn't hear a lot of discussion on what the anticipated costs are going to be to do a renovation to a large hill like this in our city. Is there anybody that could give us like a ballpark figure of what we're looking at if we approve this study, what the ongoing commitment may be?
Mr. Mayor, we do not have an estimate because we do not have a design. This is here before you because for several years staff have looked at this and have not been able to land on a suitable solution. We expect that it will be expensive, likely in the millions, but we do not have a design that we can actually cost out.
So we can't say 5 million, 10 million, or 20?
We cannot. We have conferred with our infrastructure staff, and at this point, with the information we have, which is a complete lack of detail in terms of what this might entail, we can't put a reliable number on it.
Okay, and another question for you, please, Mr. Chenier, is there's obviously other toboggan hills around the city. I host one myself in my ward. That from the study, are we going to be looking at all the other hills as well? Like I understand with Mooney Bay, it's a 70-mile-an-hour sled ride if you've got all the right conditions for it. I'm just wondering if you're going to be looking at other locations around the city and how much this program could actually end up costing us once you start expanding.
Mr. Mayor, there are 75 sanctioned hills in the city of Ottawa, probably the most of any Canadian municipalities that we can think of, that we've been able to look at. There are 35 hills. Ottawa is a very hilly territory. There are 35 hills that are not sanctioned. There are no plans. Our approach to sledding hills, the one we're talking about today and the others, has been risk mitigation. And where a hill is unsafe, we have closed it. So the 35 that we have put up signs saying that sledding is not allowed, there are no plans to redevelop the site to make them safe. There is no program to do that at the city.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hubley. Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple questions for staff on this. And so to follow up a little bit on what Councillor Hubley was asking there, so we don't know yet what the various cost estimates of any proposed recommendations for this would be. Is it fair to assume that we could build into the contract a request to come back with an incremental series of an incremental cost of various recommendations? For example, there could be, if you want to make the entire hill safe, it could be this cost. If you want to make a section of the hill safe, it could be this cost, and so forth. Could we get degrees of what those costs might be? Could we get a range of options in the contract?
Mr. Mayor, how we've envisaged this is that one of the main tenets of this is that if we do anything, the entire site has to be safe. As I discussed at committee and as outlined in the report, the entire circumference of this hill is a slope and could be, and one of the issues is that to have one safe side and all of the other areas not safe, we need mitigation to make sure that only an area is made safe, but only that area can be used. It is possible that we can develop more than one option. And you know, there's been discussion about whether it's the north slope or the west slope. There may be an option for each with different costs to it. That can be within the scope of what we're doing. And what we would then do is come back with a recommendation on perhaps a preferred option.
Thank you for that, because one thing I'm certainly interested in is that the decision we make is based on what we know, not a decision based on what we don't know. And right now we'd be making a decision premature of what we don't know yet. Can I ask, so I know, so this hill is certainly not in my ward. I know people in my ward go to this hill. My family's gone to this hill. I believe this hill probably attracts users from across the city. Do we have any data on whether or not, you say that we have 75 hills, do we have any data or do we have any reasonable assumptions on whether or not this hill is a more widely, is this one of the more popularly used, when it was used, is this hill one of the more popularly used hills in the city?
We don't have reliable data because it's in a park that isn't staffed. We do have some anecdotal from the Terry Fox Athletic Facility, which is next door. It's very busy. Whether it's the top in the city. We don't know. There are other very popular hills, Carlington, Greens Creek. There are destination hills that attract people from beyond the immediate neighborhood, and this was one of them when it was open.
Thank you. I'm going to assume that the amount that we might spend on this study is quite small compared to what we spend on maintenance, upkeep, feasibility studies for any number of our sports and recreation facilities across the city. But I'm also going to safely assume that if this study produces a recommendation that is palatable to council, that is palatable to the city, then we may end up with an asset that we can continue to use year-round. However, if we don't do this study, then I'm going to assume, may I assume that we're going to continue with the status quo, which is that this hill would not be used in winter at all? We would hold it closed for winter completely?
Mr. Mayor, that's correct. The hill was closed in 2017, and we reaffirmed and secured it in 2022. And so the intent would be that the hill would be used during non-winter months, and it is quite extensively used. And that extensive use is part of the challenge of doing this, because it's used for a variety of other athletic pursuits, leisure pursuits as well.
Then I guess my concern is if we do nothing, if we don't do the study, then we will certainly uphold the status quo of the hill not being used. And my concern there is that we have what is already a popular asset that would be completely inert during winter, and so we would not be fully realizing the potential of that asset. There may be a path forward where there could be an option that we could accept and we could decide as a council to afford. And that would, this is, if and when this hill is safe, this is a healthy, free, accessible activity in winter that would provide a lot of benefits to a lot of people. So at the very least, I'm willing to consider the study to find out what we don't know. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Devine. Councillor Curry.
Thank you. So I have a number of questions and comments. I have a lot of trouble supporting $150,000, which was previously going to be $250,000 for this study. It's the money part of it, because I find it hard to believe that we can't figure this out ourselves. The other thing I will point out is if we were to spend money on a study, I cannot see, and this is really a question to staff, and tell me if you can see anybody coming back and saying, if you do this, the toboggan hill will be safe. Because as a teacher and as a parent, I've never seen any toboggan hill that is safe. It's a matter of kids going down, smashing into each other. And you tell them, okay, guys, nobody comes down the hill until the way is clear. And they come down the hill and they smash into each other. So, you know, $150,000, there's no study that's going to come back and tell us that if you do this, it will be safe, because there's no such thing. Is that true?
Mr. Mayor, our objective in all of this would be to make the hill safer, but not completely safe. The hill in its current configuration is very fast and has significant obstacles there. And so eliminating or reducing some of those things would be the safer part of this. But Councillor, you're correct that kids will be kids, and it is an activity that generates injuries even on hills that are safer.
Well, exactly. I mean, in Canada, south, Councillor Hubie's ward, there's the big hill at the at the Tony Graham Rec Center. And kids make the big jumps with the ice ramps, and then they jump off there, and then they smash into each other. And I just think, I don't know that we can't figure this out if this is the hill that can be figured out. So I can't support the cost of this. I think that staff can go away and look at if there's anything else we can do. I also look at some of the other things we have coming up in our budget, and I would have to, you know, during this time right now where it's not budget and we're not saying, okay, then where are you going to take $150,000 from when you have to do that during budget? I have trouble figuring out where I would take $150,000 from right now to get a study that I don't think is going to help us that much. So I don't think I'll be supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. You know, I've heard a couple of points from colleagues talking about the study and the cost of the study, and let's see the options. But I've also heard from staff that any option would likely cost millions of dollars. So I think the fact that we're talking about spending $150,000 to receive information back from staff that it's going to cost millions of dollars to fix the hill is probably not as palatable for some as it is for others. And I would be in the group that it's not that palatable for. But obviously safety is paramount. Options for recreation for people are important considerations. I know that this is a hill that people travel far and wide to use, probably because of the speeds you can get up to. So I'm a little more concerned with options for local people and having the ability for free recreation. So I guess my next question to staff is, in terms of the immediate area within 5 to 10 kilometers, how many other options are there available to people in this area?
Mr. Mayor, within the 9 kilometers, there are 3 hills, Grasshopper Hill Park, Russell Boyd Park, and Carlington Park.
And do you feel that that is sufficient number of hills to serve the immediate community for its tobogganing needs without the hill at the location we're discussing today?
Mr. Mayor, they are all reasonable distances for families who can, who have the ability to get to those sites. We do recognize that those who used Mooney's Bay as a walk-to would not have the same accessibility.
But nevertheless, there would be options within a reasonable distance for families should we not proceed with altering this hill. So I'm just wondering if staff could be clear on whether or not they feel that this investment would be necessary in order to ensure that there are sufficient resources for tobogganing in the winter for people in this community.
Mr. Mayor, staff took the position of closing the hill in 2017 and reasserting the closure in 2022 because we did not feel that this hill can easily be made safe without spending a lot of money. And so we did not recommend doing that. The report that's before you is because we were asked to put forward an option for council to look at in terms of resolving this issue. But this is not a solution that staff would have brought forward. We would have maintained our previous 2017 and 2022 position of keeping the hill closed.
Thank you for the clarification on that. I do appreciate that. And was it explored, like if this is something that, and I don't know whether this is a question for the ward councillor or for staff, but was it considered, if this is something that's very important to the immediate community, was it discussed to potentially using the cash in lieu of parkland funds that are available for Ward 16, which my understanding is about $1.5 million?
Mayor, if I heard the question correctly from my colleague, you're asking about the community's interest or desire for this hill. Is that the first part of your question?
Correct. And if it is high, have you considered using cash in lieu of parkland funds from your ward account?
That had not been explored before, Councillor. The staff recommendation looks at using the citywide cash in lieu amount, but it's not something that had been approached to me at this point.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's all my questions, and I don't believe at this point it's something I could support. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor DeRuse.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is very good, actually, conversation, and I don't want to repeat what Councillor Curry said, and actually Councillor Kelly just asked the same question. I mean, we all do have some improvements sometimes to do in our ward, and first things we go and staff, we discuss CIL. So I heard the councillor of the ward, his answer on that, and maybe something he need to discuss with staff, because I mean, I see CIL will be perfect funding for that project. And this is just for the record, this is not to fix the issue. So we're going to pay 250 or 150, and I'm not sure how we come to that number to go ahead and see someone telling us how we can have a safe hill, which is it's a tobogganing hill. There will always be a risk. It doesn't matter how you do it. You can put bumper all around that hill, will accident always appear, but that's not the argument here today. I do think the CIL will be the perfect venue for it, but I do have a quick question. And is that Mr. Chenier, is this an NCC asset or this is a city asset?
Mr. Mayor, this is a NCC-owned property that's on a long-term lease with the City of Ottawa. And so NCC owns the property, and any changes we make to it will, of course, be subject to their approval.
So again, if we want to do any work or any improvement on that, we still have to go through another process with NCC to implement the changes?
Yes, we expect that, as is the case with any other work we do on NCC lands that we occupy, that a federal land use agreement will be required, and that we'll have to submit the details of what we want to do to get the approval.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chenier. And I agree with Councillor Kelly. I cannot support the proposal for what it is for now. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor DeRose. Councillor Tierney.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I apologize. I was busy, so I couldn't tune in. I followed up on some of the notes from the meeting. And I had a couple of quick questions. First of all, I noticed a lot of changes on trying to make Hill safer in general overall, and this may have been asked at your committee, Laura, about straw bales. I see these things tied to all my trees in my neighborhood on even the smallest of hills, which is fine. But is there a cost on resources for what we're doing mitigation-wise for all the hills we have right now?
Mr. Mayor, there is a cost both within my department and Public Works Department for the seasonal installation of things like padding and bales and signage, and fairly minimal at this point because we generally focus on a limited number of sites where there are known collision hazards.
Yeah, for sure. And that makes a lot of sense. I was just curious because it's always a resource issue as well. The straw bales don't tie themselves to the trees, and that means something else might be missed, and our folks are doing a great job of it on ODRs and things like that as well. So there's competing interests. And when I see global CIL or citywide CIL being used for a study that frankly at the end of the day I don't think is going to be successful. I guess another question would be related to, and my colleague, Councillor Hubley, mentioned this to me, and I thought, yeah, this is a good point. What would the impact be if we decided to go ahead with, it could be a 5 million, 10 million, who knows? We don't know. We're dreaming right now. We get the NCC approval, go through all these hoops. Would there be a significant change where parts of that facility would be closed? And I'm thinking more so about Dragon Boat and of course our beach volleyball. That site is very, very well used for a multi site is very, very well used for a multi site is very, very well used for a multi move a river in the interim. So would it be a significant impact on the site?
Mr. Mayor, that is an aspect of this that is challenging in that the hill itself, aside from the 8 or so weeks where potential winter use is done, is used extensively to host cross-country running competitions, for example, from the Terry Fox Athletic Complex, national level events in some cases. It's used extensively by the Lions Club for summer training and for a variety of boot camps and other activities. It's also been used as part of the park hosting special events, since it does provide a great vantage point. So part of the issue, because there has been suggestions, put trees, put shrubs, do a bunch of hill modifications. The hill modifications that would need to be done need to be sensitive to the other weeks of the year when there are different uses of the park. The other potential issue that we need to solve is that the park is heavily used for cross-country skiing, and one of the hazards that needs to be mitigated is the sled confrontation with skiers and with the grooming equipment that produces the trails throughout the park. So these are all considerations that feed into the fact that we've been looking for a solution for quite a while that addresses all of these and have fallen short on that.
Yeah, and that's where my head's kind of at too is, look, the problem is it's a super successful site. It draws in multitudes of festival events that benefit the city, and I don't see a path, even if we went through all the hoops, we got through all the costing, how we could operate any of these events at other sites in the interim. It's a real challenge. So I think we have to pick our battles on or where locations are for some of these hills. It's been recognized. We have many other hills. I spent my life fake snowboarding on Carlington Hill when I was a kid, and I got Greens Creek in my area, which is, you see a lot of great people out there having a good time, a nice lit area. So we have plenty of hills. I think this is, and I'm going to turn to Mr. Huxley now as well, as we have all these constraints. Toronto, you saw they finally are getting their toboggan hills back after so many years, because when lawyers get involved, it's always they have to look out for a lot of people. So I guess from Mr. Huxley, from your point of view, especially knowing the tragedy that occurred on that hill, would it be in our best interest not to reuse a hill? Because I think that would probably put us in a situation where we flag something, and unless we do major improvements, we probably shouldn't use that hill anymore.
Mr. Mayor, I think you've heard the comments of the general manager, who's indicated his concerns and his staff's concerns since 2017 and then reiterated in 2022. The city is an occupier of the premises. It's owned by the NCC, but as an occupier, the city has a duty to make sure that that hill is reasonably safe for its users. And you've heard the concerns from the general manager, which would be consistent with the city's legal obligations to obviously recognize what has happened at that hill, the instances and the concerns of speed and other things. So I think the legal position that has been set out is consistent with what the general managers relayed to you today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Huxley. So from my perspective, I will not be supporting this. But if anyone ever wants to come out to Greens Creek and go for a toboggan with me, you're more than welcome to. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Councillor Luloff.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. Y a-t-il des autres pièces de luge dans ce quartier?
Any other hills for that in the area? Mr. Mayor, in the area 9 kilometers around, there are 3 other hills that can accommodate sledding, hills of various heights that provide different choices. What is the legal responsibility of the city in case of closing? What are the legal risk and legal responsibilities, and what does the NCC has to say about this liability or responsibility? Mr. Mayor, the city, as an occupant of this property, is responsible to make sure that the activities that take place there are safe. The closing of the hill is a result of an accident, of some injuries, and that the city doesn't want this to happen again. As for the NCC, it's grateful to the city that the city wants to make the site safer and that we're looking at options. As I said before, it would be necessary to discuss, to look at the plans that we have with the NCC if ever we decide to make alteration, because the property is the NCC property. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Merci. Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
This is a tough one for sure. I know we want to take advantage of that hill for all the good reasons that we can have fun out there and be Canadians in the wintertime. But I acknowledge the balance that you're concerned about with regard to safety. I recall this debate back in the fall when we had it, and I guess the add that I would have to this is, have we looked at this from the city's perspective as a potential partnership with a private organization that might be willing to take on some of that liability risk? I use as an example, there's a hill in Toronto at Earl Bales Park, which is a similar kind of grade and size in terms of its scope. And I believe that they have third parties that run like small scale ski operations and such, and it's, you know, there's only one way you can go down the hill there. So my question is, instead of looking at this as a city problem to solve, is there an option that has been looked at or that could be looked at to potentially outsource the operations or some of the risk to a third party?
Mr. Mayor, we have not looked at that for this hill. Our lease with the NCC would require us to have that discussion with them in terms of whether they would allow a privatization of part of that operation. We have done that at another site that I can think of, Carlington Hill, probably 2 decades ago. Did a contract with a tubing operator who had control of the hill. Our concern is, of course, that the hill is not self-contained, and that even though an operator might be able to secure what they are doing when they are there, this would require essentially a gating of that area to make sure that 24/7 for the entire winter the site is secure. But we have not looked at that as an option.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Councillor Menard.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and just a happy May Day to all the workers out there in the City of Ottawa. It's International Workers' Day today, and it's May 1st, so happy May Day, and thanks for everybody for all the work that you put in to make this city what it is, including the people that work on our toboggan hills. I'm pro-sledding. I want to see more sledding in this city. I want to see more tobogganing. I want to see more snowboarding. I want to see people out there having fun and enjoying the hills that we have to offer. And sometimes that means making them safe. And in this case, obviously, we lost an 11-year-old girl, Jose, not because the hill, but because of operational issues and posts that were left up that shouldn't have been left up. And I guess my question is, what are we spending right now to keep people off the hill? Like, there must be operational costs yearly to keep people off the hill. So how much is that?
Mr. Mayor, it's costing, we spend about $19,000. When I say we, it's between my department and Public Works Department. Part of that is for fencing, but part of that is, and as per recommendations from the coroner that looked at the incident, we are maintaining things like hay bales and padding at the site in case somebody should use it. So overall, $19,000 is being spent to make the site secure.
So about $20,000 a year in any event. This hill, in my view, shouldn't be shut down to the public. We should be finding a way to let people sled here as they had previously for decades. And if that takes a study to give us options, we may not implement all those options, but we might get some ideas for it. But I don't want to see this hill shut down. I don't think that makes any sense. What makes sense is to make it safe for people, just like we do at all the other toboggan hills that we've got. And there's lots of areas that we don't want to see people sledding. And we usually put up signs and measures to make sure that they know it's unsafe there to do so and that that's at their risk. The same thing should occur here. So this is also an area where there's a lot of mixed income families in this area. They don't have a ton of options to walk 9 kilometers somewhere. They walk to this hill. And so to me, this hill should be opened up. Is the intent of the study to find a way to open up the hill to allow for that type of winter activity in this winter city? Is that the intent?
Mr. Mayor, that's correct. The proposed study in this report would look at what are the site modifications that could be made to secure a safer slope to slide on, and a plan that would avoid the use of the other sides of the hill that aren't safe.
Okay, well, to me, that makes a lot of sense. I've gone sledding here lots in the past when I was growing up in the city. I didn't live anywhere near it, but we went to it because it was the hill to be at. And I think the same thing is for those people in that neighborhood, but also across the city. We got to find a way to make it safe for people, but open it and be enjoyable at the same time with having winter activities. And it's a pretty small sum to pay to get some ideas about how to do that. I wish we could just do it without the study, but it seems that that's the recommendation here, is to have that study. And I want to see this hill opened and safe for the public. So I'll be supporting it's cash in lieu funding, right? It's not additional taxes, it's cash in lieu funding where this would come from?
It's citywide cash in lieu funding that's included in the report.
Okay, well, it's a citywide hill, so that makes sense. Just like there's a lot of citywide funding, cash in lieu, that's been spent on Lansdowne in the past. Brewer Park is a citywide park. There's lots of citywide activities where CIL goes to in this case, so it's not breaking precedent. I'll be supporting the recommendation that I believe committee passed unanimously. Mayor? Do we know, Mayor? Did the committee pass this unanimously?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
It's unanimous? Okay, thanks very much, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Carr?
Thank you very much. And I did have questions at committee, and not all were answered. Just, I really struggle with this. I mean, certainly I take the point that, you know, there's a lot of lower middle income families in the neighborhood. I would consider my ward to be practically in the neighborhood that use the hill. There's a lot of free activities at Mooney Bay, including playground. We've got dragon boat concerts are free in the summer, and you certainly can see the mixed crowd that comes in there. Where I struggle is that, you know, we have very clear policies on upgrading our parks and recreation to ensure that they are accessible. And I don't see this as a possibility in this case to make sure that a hill could ever be accessible for people. So when we talk about wanting to make sure that we have inclusive, accessible recreation options, I don't think that this will ever be the case. And when I look around Mooney Bay Park, I still see cases where we've still got a fitness park that's on sand, where we still have picnic tables that are on grass, that aren't accessible. And my preference is always to see investment in activities that make this a city for everybody and that are accessible to everyone. And so I struggle a lot with an 8-week time frame to invest in a study that is not going to be something that's used by everyone. At committee meeting, Mr. Wary said that he believed that we would need to seek an exemption on the AODA if we were to move ahead with this. Is the study going to include, it mentions the AODA in the study, that there would be accessible paths, and is it just for tobogganing, or is it looking at the hill overall for like year-round use?
Mr. Mayor, the intent of the study was just to look at sledding and finding an accommodation for safer sledding on the hill. As was mentioned at committee, it's highly unlikely that we will be able to make this hill fully accessible for people with mobility challenges so that they could reach the middle of the hill or the top of the hill, whatever the solution is, without altering the hill, and referring to my previous comments, altering the hill to the extent to allow for things like wide pathways with gentle slopes would simply change the character of the hill completely. So we could certainly include in a review some options to make access to the hill for observation and for takeoff to perhaps things like much like we do with beaches with chairs to go into the water. We could perhaps have sleds that provide access to a sliding experience. But in terms of modifications to the hill, it's very unlikely. And in those cases, what we would do is ask the advisory committee to look at what we are proposing exempt where we don't think we can meet, things like slope and grade and those types of things. And then perhaps mitigation. As I said, there may be mitigations that, short of actually creating a path up the hill, that could provide some access for those with mobility challenges.
Thank you very much. There was talk about, you know, the $19,000 a year that's being spent on fencing and protection right now to keep access off the hill. That's just for the winter months, I believe. It's taken down seasonally so that people can access the hill. And I realize this is a very speculative question, but if the report comes back and it says that, you know, it's so many $1 million to secure the hill, or the hill can't be secured, what is, like, are we gonna, is there any talk about, like, that's an expensive ongoing cost that we're paying to protect a hill over time. Is it sufficient from a legal liability status? Like, what would be the next steps in that case if the report came back?
Mr. Mayor, if the decision was made that the hill would close permanently and that there was no other plan, we would work with our public works colleagues to reduce the cost. We have looked at options like, rather than renting the fence, if we're going to install it every year, we could simply purchase it and deploy it seasonally. We believe that we can probably bring the cost, the annual cost of winterizing the site, down to somewhere in the area of $7,000.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Leeper.
Thank you, Mayor. Is it fair to say that the city does not know for sure what the range of options are for making this sledding hill safe?
Mr. Mayor, that is true.
And is it fair to say that we don't know how much it would cost to make this sledding hill safe?
We do not have a solution, so we do not know what it would cost.
And is it fair to say that there has been significant public pressure to reopen this hill?
I yield to the ward councillor, who I think probably gets that pressure. We, when the hill was changed in 2017 from approved to not approved, we did get pressure and public comment on it. Obviously, people who enjoyed the site did not like it. As well, in 2022, when we first erected the fence, there was some comment, although certainly to staff it was not extensive.
Okay. I agree with you. I think the ward councillor has probably faced significant public pressure to reopen the hill. When I take a look at the vote that we took in this term of council, that ultimately failed to try to require staff to reopen the hill. There is a geographic dispersion of votes that would indicate to me that the councillors who are in the wards nearby are hearing from their residents that the hill should be reopened. And that pressure is not going to stop. People are going to continue to ask the ward councillors in the vicinity of this hill to reopen the hill. And our answer back to them can't be, we're just not going to. Our answer back to them can't be, we don't want to know whether there is a safe way to reopen the hill. The answer back can't be, we don't want to know how much it would cost to reopen this hill. That is not fair to the residents who have lost an amenity. It's not fair to the residents who, from what I understand, are disproportionately more vulnerable users, to tell them that we're not going to explore reopening the amenity anymore. And for a $150,000 study to find out what our options are for a very popular region-wide amenity strikes me as an obvious spend. So I'm more than happy to support it. I appreciate the work that committee did to bring the cost of that study down, to authorize fewer dollars, but at $150,000 to find out what the answer is, that is the fairest thing that we can do on behalf of residents today. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Leeper. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mayor. Jose Abdiasel, age 11, December 27th, 2021. Let us not forget her. Colleagues, thank you for the conversation today. I appreciate some very thoughtful comments on both sides of this discussion, and including those at committee where this was passed 8-0. I'm just going to summarize my thoughts. You've certainly heard enough from me on this matter, but this is a major park. This is a regional park, or I think what the general manager calls a district park. Very well used in 4 seasons. This hill was built for winter activities, especially for skiing, and it's been used for tobogganing for 50 years. On weekends, we could see, I would say, easily up to 1,000 people over 2 days when it's, you know, the right conditions. Tons of parking and very well used, not just by people who drive, but many people who live in the vicinity who walk, and many people who this is their winter activity that they can afford and that they can walk to and get to with their family. There are about a dozen skyscrapers in the community in Hogs Back and Ridgewood and Springland in the area, and many new Canadians as well that live in some of those buildings. And as we've heard from others, this is a free outdoor Canadian activity that every Canadian family partakes in at some point. And really, Mooney Bay Park is a destination park. So I live in this community. I've tobogganed here as a kid. In my day, you would start at Vincent Massey on the south side of Heron Road. Vincent Massey had a hill, much less steep. You sort of started there. Thank you. And then you graduated to Mooney's Bay, but Mooney's Bay is definitely a destination hill. I agree with the comments about money. Every dollar counts, and we are all stewards of the public purse, and we should push back and ask questions about, is this a good investment? It's a very fair question that many of you asked, and I appreciate that. I think we have an obligation to the public, given that this is a destination park. If we reject this today, the park is basically closed for tobogganing. And what I'm saying is, let's ask for the professional expertise that could give us that range. Obviously, if it comes back $10 million, there's no appetite to pursue that. But if there are options available that are reasonable, then it goes to committee, and the committee makes decisions that come back to council. Everything comes back to council. We are not green lighting any major construction project. We're just saying do the study. And as the general manager can confirm, I have people who have created ski hills out of rock faces that have contacted us, people in other parts of Ontario where they've done remediation work related to toboggan hills. People have been very open sending us their suggestions, which I've shared with the general manager. So if people can build a ski hill on a rock face through trees and do that safely, then surely we have expertise that can look at a toboggan hill. So, and other comments I've made is we certainly facilitate skating on the Rideau Canal or skiing where injuries occur in significant numbers, and we still keep those open, and we do our best to educate people and have a duty of care to keep those as safe as we can. For those who are concerned about the cost, and this coming exclusively out of the city-wide cash in lieu, I am willing to compromise here. I am willing to move a motion seconded by Councillor Leeper that basically the $150,000 would be split 50-50 between the citywide cash in lieu account of up to $75,000 and up to $75,000 from the River Ward cash in lieu. So if people believe that the local ward should contribute to this study, I am willing to go 50-50 on that, Mayor, and that's why this motion here is put on the floor. So, colleagues, of course, at the end of the day, I'd like to see this hill remain open, but safe. And the only way we're going to get to safe is we employ the professional expertise that can give us an option or options, and then it'll be up to committee and ultimately council to where to go from that point. But I do believe, despite the cost, that this is an investment we need to take to keep this destination park open in the winter. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington. I just want to ask a very quick question, and simply, Mr. Chenier, just that what I've heard from you today is you've looked at this multiple times from a safety perspective, and it's the professional opinion of you and your team that it's unlikely that we're going to find an affordable solution to providing a safe option here in the future.
That's correct, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So, you know, for my part, I don't think this is about sledding and about whether we're trying to provide great places for people in the community. It's simply about whether we want to spend $150,000 of taxpayers' money on a study. And I think we have a good sense of where that study is going to lead already. So the question is not, are we going to make this hill safe or not? The question is, are we going to spend $150,000 on a study before we decide that we're not going to do anything on the site? That seems to be the direction this is going in. So for that reason, I won't be supporting the motion even as amended. So let's first.
Mayor, on a point of privilege, I think you've mischaracterized the remarks that, or the position that Councillor Brockington has taken. I think he's made it very clear that it's not taxpayer dollars.
It's money that, it's the city's money, ultimately. So however you want to phrase that.
It's
Okay.
important.
It's money that we could spend on
envelope.
something else as a municipality.
Okay, yeah, you're in the
Okay.
chair. Obviously,
Okay.
it's your choice
I'm
to
not-
withdraw that or not,
Well,
or modify it.
Yeah, I don't, okay. I'm not, let's just call it city money that we could spend on something else. Is this on a point of order, or because we're already at the point of voting, Councillor Hill?
Well, if there's amendment to the motion, am I eligible to speak to that?
Sure, we can speak to the amendment, yeah.
So I appreciate that the pie's getting sliced up a little bit. I guess my value to this debate is that I would like to offer that we have been told that not all of the options with regard to looking at privatizing the safety of this or operations of this have been researched with the National Capital Commission. And personally, I'm not convinced that we need a $150,000 contract in order to engage that discussion. I would think that our city staff could sit down for 2 or 3 meetings with the NCC and with potential private partners to say, are there ways that we could leverage?
Councillor Hill, is this, you said you were going to speak about the amendment?
That's right.
The amendment is to change how much of the cost is being paid by the councillor's CIL versus how much is being paid by citywide CIL.
That's right.
That's not what you're speaking to at the moment.
The amendment is speaking to how this is going to be costed. What I'm suggesting is that regardless of how this is costed, and a new form has been put forward to make this attractive to someone that wouldn't want to see the additional funds coming from general revenues, but seeing a split. What I'm offering is that perhaps a consideration to defer this until after further engagement with the National Capital Commission and private partners could provide some option space, because we have heard that has not happened. I wouldn't want to see us imply by denying this motion that the Mooney Bay Hill never be used again, but at the same time, I acknowledge the fact that we've been told that it's not safe in the current construct. But I just am not convinced that whether $75,000 from Councillor Brockington's budget plus $75,000 from the city's coffers is required to have the conversations to look at options to privatize the hill. That's my point.
Okay. Okay. On the amendment then, is the amendment carried?
Carried.
Okay. And then on the actual motion as amended, could we have a recorded vote, please?
Councillor DeRush.
No.
Councillor Carr.
Yes.
Councillor Troster.
Yes.
Councillor Johnson.
Yes.
Councillor Lowe.
Yes.
Councillor Leeper.
Yes.
Councillor Gower.
No.
Councillor Brockington.
Yes.
Councillor Kitts.
No.
Councillor DeRuse.
No.
Councillor Tierney.
No.
Councillor Hubley.
No.
Councillor Curry.
No.
Councillor Brown.
No.
Councillor Menard.
Yes.
Councillor Devine.
Yes.
Councillor King.
Yes.
Councillor Hill.
No.
Councillor Plant.
Oui.
Councillor Dudas.
Yes.
Councillor Bradley.
Yes?
Councillor Kavanagh.
Yes.
Councillor Kelly.
No.
Councillor Luloff?
No.
Mayor Sutcliffe?
No.
13, 12. 13 yeas, 12 nays.
Okay, carried. Let's go to item 12.3, the renovictions motion. I know there were some people who wanted to speak to that. The motion by Councillor Choster on renovictions.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. Je vote contre cette motion aujourd'hui parce
I will be voting against this motion today. At the beginning of this session, I asked if I could actually add a revision when we're talking about cameras on private properties. We understand that we will lose some of their privacy in the front and in the backyard. We were told that there was nothing on the working plan but what was approved by the council. I think that we have the time to look into this issue. If this issue is important today, it was also the same at the beginning of our mandate. We already decided about our priority, and if we keep on adding on tasks to the personnel, we will not be able to reach our objectives. During the last mandate, we were not able to do the examine all of this status. We could actually use better this time instead of proceeding with an analysis. If someone has to move out because of repairs and maintenance, there is a law, and the tenants have the rights to come back paying exactly the same rent. Us, as councillors, as well as groups, could concentrate on public education, trying to make them understand their rights, the tenants' rights.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Many of you have heard me speak at council about the impact of evictions in my ward, about the kind of people we are hearing from multiple times a week, primarily senior women, people who have lived in their homes for 20, 30 years, who are given an N13 eviction notice, are often intimidated, they move out, and then they see their apartment listed a couple weeks later with very few renovations have been made. This isn't just anecdotal. The rate of N13 evictions has increased 545% in the last 3 years. And we had a very extensive committee meeting to discuss this motion where overwhelmingly people came to share their experience of eviction and how traumatic it was for their lives. There was a woman, Eileen Leo, who came from the Mission to talk about a problem they're having now where clients who initially arrive in shelter, who go through all sorts of social support programs, who are able to finally secure housing, and then they're renovicted and end up back in shelter. I don't need to tell you that our shelter system is over capacity. And if we don't stem the loss of affordable housing, which we're now losing at a rate of 31-1, those costs are going to be borne by the city to shelter people. There's just no two ways about it. But I wanted to very quickly speak to the very fruitful discussion that we had at committee and some of the concerns that were raised, because I think they are really important. And I referred to this in a note that I sent to councillors before this meeting. The first one was the issue of scope. So the City of Hamilton, in their own anti-renoviction bylaw, city staff in Hamilton determined that the bylaw they enacted was within the scope of the Municipal Act and did complement rather than override existing provincial legislation. This motion is simply asking staff to take an initial look, not even a costed look, an initial look. And it includes 2 more decision gates. One would be coming back to council to ask to do a study. And then if that was approved, it would be coming back to council again with a potential bylaw. So there's 2 steps in the process. And to address Councillor Luloff's concerns
The next gate would be to decide on work priorities about whether this is something we would want to prioritize or not. And that is something in working with 3 staff departments that my office, that staff insisted on and we agreed to, is to add an extra step. So this is really just opening the door a little bit to start to take a look at what other jurisdictions are doing. My understanding is that New Westminster, BC had an anti-renoviction bylaw in place for about 3 years. It significantly reduced the rate of evictions, and then the provincial government later adopted the same rules, and then the municipality was able to pull back their bylaw. So what I'm looking to do here is to fill a policy gap, to solve an aspect of our housing crisis that is very, very difficult to solve. And we don't know what the Made in Ottawa solution is going to look like yet. It may look like what Hamilton's doing, it may not. The answer might also include more education for tenants to understand their rights. We heard from a lawyer from Community Legal Services talking about the number of people who will move out, who don't wait for their N13 eviction to go to the board, and then they find out they've been evicted unjustly. So what we're trying to do here, and I was really grateful to have support of the committee in a really extensive conversation, is to try to fill a policy gap to solve a pressing problem in our city. The best way to end homelessness is to stop it from happening. And I can tell you, based on the calls and the visits that we're getting in my office, this is a real problem that we need to find a solution to. So if you look at the wording of the motion, it also asks staff to take a look at new federal renter rights legislation, take a look at Bill 97, which has yet to receive royal assent from the province. This initial look, we'll have them come back and say, okay, if we want to study this more deeply, this is what it will cost, and it will be up to council to make that decision. So I just wanted to be really clear that this is just an initial step, but I think it does bear our attention. The stories we heard at committee were absolutely heart-wrenching, and we can't allow eviction into homelessness to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Troster. Councillor Hill?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just would like to clarify, I know that in 2022, there was a resolution that came to staff on a very similar topic, and I just wanted to see if staff have had the opportunity to look at that and how they're going to be addressing that specific motion in comparison to this one, if there's complementary information, if it's going to be sequential, or how that's going to be done.
Apologies, Mayor. Just conferring here. From a community social services perspective, we did comment, I believe it was last fall, in terms of tenant supports. And our analysis at that time was that the most effective way and cost-effective way to continue to support tenants is through funding to social service agencies that have the expertise on the ground to intervene in situations as described by Councillor Troster, where people are presented a notice, for instance, and they need some social support and understanding of the law. That's provided free of charge through legal clinics, for instance, and housing help, Action Logement, those types of organizations that we fund.
Thank you very much. My biggest concern here is that we're not opening up potential options whereby we're slowing down infill development in the downtown core. And I'm certainly concerned about that aspect because I know that that plays a significant role in terms of housing supply and the rents that tenants are paying. So I appreciate the discussion that happened back in committee in this as well, but thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Councillor Curry.
Mr. Mayor, at committee, a number of people asked questions, and I definitely asked a question on this topic about what staff think about the time it would take to complete what this motion is asking, and what are they not doing while they do this. I mean, our understanding is that staff have a lot on their plate right now in terms of the Housing Accelerator Fund money, other monies, and now we ask them to do other things. Fair enough, this is an issue. There are other levels of government that look at it, and that's in this motion as well. But I asked staff, what, when councillors say, well, staff are supportive of this motion. Well, we all know that staff help write motions but aren't fully supportive of them. But I asked, what would it look like for staff to do this? And I believe the answer came back, well, we'll be working on this for the next 4 months. And other councillors said, well, I heard staff say that they're supportive of this and they can do this. And I just want to ask this again now with full council. Are staff fully supportive of this and that they have 4 months to be working on this? There aren't other things that they would be doing instead. This is a worthy use of their time. I'd like a comment from staff on that before I make my final decision on this vote.
Thank you, Mayor. That's a very good question. And I can assure you that we spent a lot of time on this file looking at what the options are. And this preliminary assessment is something that we feel that we can do and bring forward in Q4 of 2024 in order to look at what the possible future may hold with regards to doing a full bylaw review.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I would thank my colleague for this motion. It's about expanding our toolbox as a city. This is something we have to do. As chair of Ottawa Community Housing, fully support more housing. We need to build it, but it's clearly not enough. We can't keep up with the housing that is getting eliminated from our housing stock across the city. And that's what concerns me. The catch-up will never happen. So we need to look at this, and I appreciate the staff are working on a number of issues. In June 2022, I put forward a motion to direct staff to examine several items, including rent replacement bylaw, which looks at the ongoing problem of dem evictions, and we're still waiting on that. So at the end of the Planning and Housing Committee, I brought forward that inquiry to get an update. But the work seems to be paused, and I get that we're working on a number of things. What we need to do is look at this very seriously, because it's about keeping affordable housing, and that's what we all want. This isn't going to affect the housing that's being built, the infills, et cetera. This is about looking at renovictions, not touching projects that are moving forward on that has been mentioned, such as infill. And frankly, most of the infill I see in my ward is not affordable. It's not affordable at all. It tends to be on high-priced property, and it's semis put in, and it's good to have 2 versus 1, but at the same time, it's quite expensive. What isn't expensive is what we've already had, but is getting renovated and sold and rented at higher rates. So I'm very concerned about that. We have to have this looked at. Hamilton saw that as well. And I think that this is the best way to go forward, is to preserve affordable housing, along with the fact that we need to build it. One good example of preserving affordable housing is what Ottawa Community Housing did recently, purchasing 300 townhomes, 311, pardon me, townhomes on the Tanglewood Chesterton community from Minto. This is proactive saving of housing that was affordable and keeping it affordable. I'm very proud of this move, and I hope to see more of it. But in the meantime, there's a whole bunch of stuff happening out there that we're losing, and we need to catch up on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Carr.
Thank you very much, and I will support this motion, but listening to everyone talk today, I think that at a certain point we need to have a discussion as councillors. We've all agreed that affordable housing is our most important priority, but where we put that focus going forward, and perhaps this will come along as part of the refresh of the 10-year housing and homelessness plan, we've been heavily focused on assisting in building up that supply that we have of nonprofit housing, and fully recognizing that market housing is not going to solve our current crisis. We've been focused on providing deeper subsidies in order to get people out of homelessness and into better homes. And so I think, absolutely we need to diversify our toolbox, but I think we need to ultimately have a discussion what the best use of resources are, because it's great to improve your toolbox, but we have very, very limited resources. And if we're going to be developing new programs to regulate in the private market, that's as opposed to investing in not-for-profit housing. I think that's a discussion we have, but I do agree we need to have that report to make those decisions. But So I will support the motion, but look forward to broader conversations on how we prioritize around the council table on these investments.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Carr. If we could have a recorded vote then on the motion, please.
Councillor DeRush.
Yes.
Councillor Carr.
Yes.
Councillor Troster.
Yes.
Councillor Johnson.
Yes.
Councillor Lowe.
Yes.
Councillor Leeper.
Yes.
Councillor Gower.
Yes.
Councillor Brockington.
Yes.
Councillor Kitts.
Yes.
Councillor Giroux.
No.
Councillor Tierney.
Yes.
Councillor Hubley.
No.
Councillor Curry.
Yes.
Councillor Brown.
No.
Councillor Menard.
Yes.
Councillor Devine.
Yes.
Councillor King.
Yes.
Councillor Hill.
No.
Councillor Plante.
Absolument.
Councillor Dudas.
Yes.
Councillor Bradley.
Yes.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Councillor Kelly.
Yes.
Councillor Lulaf.
No.
Mayor Sutcliffe.
Yes.
20 yeas, 5 nays.
Carried. Okay. There were no in-camera items, so motion to adopt reports. Councillor Bradley?
That the Community Services Committee Report 9, Environment and Climate Change Committee Report 10, Planning and Housing Committee Report 26, and the report from the City Clerk entitled Summary of Oral and Written Public Submissions for Items Subject to the Planning Act, Explanation Requirements, at the City Council meeting of April 17th, 2024 be received and adopted as amended.
Carried. Motions requiring suspension of the rules of procedure. Councillor Kavanaugh, I believe you have a motion and it's of a time-sensitive nature. So on suspension of the rules, is that carried? Councillor Kavanaugh?
Thank you very much, thank you very much to my council colleagues and to the mayor. I appreciate this. I'll read the whole motion. It's important you hear it all. Whereas there is evidence that the former Catholic graveyard located at McDonald Gardens Park, located near Rideau and Coburg Street, contains the remains of victims of the Great Irish Famine, 1845 to 1851. There were among thousands of famine refugees who arrived in Bytown in the summer of 1847, malnourished and often suffering from typhus. Whereas the Irish famine refugees were met with heroic compassion in Ottawa by Sister Bruyere and the Sisters of Charity, the Oblate Fathers, Dr. Van Cortlandt, other clergy and women volunteers. Whereas of the 106,812 famine victims who made the journey to Canada in the summer of 1847, 1/5 died either on passage or on Canadian soil. Yet the vast majority of them survived and prospered, testament to the resilience of the human spirit when offered compassion, hope, and opportunity. And whereas the Irish of Bytown, Ottawa, helped shape the city, countless Irish who came to Bytown throughout the 19th century to build the Rideau Canal, work in the lumber industry, and farm the Ottawa and Gatineau valleys. And whereas Canadians and Indigenous people provided compassionate care to Irish immigrants, the exemplary efforts of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat nations will be recognized as part of the National Famine Way projects of Ireland, which commemorates the journey undertaken by 1,490 famine immigrants who walked from Stokesville, County Roscommon, to ships to Dublin port during the Irish famine of the 1840s. Good thing it was a short meeting. Whereas an ambitious plan has emerged to partner with the National Famine Museum in Stokestown, County Roscommon, Ireland, to extend the commemoration of the Irish Famine Immigrant Way to Canada. Whereas the symbols marking the Famine Way in Ireland is a pair of bronze shoes that signifies the hope journey and flight from famine. And whereas a number of these bronze shoes will arrive from Ireland aboard a ship, the Celtic Explorer, on May 9th, 2024 in Newfoundland. From there, they will be shipped to various locations across Canada where monuments will be erected on Grosse Île, Quebec City, Montreal, and Toronto, with other communities actively considering doing so as well. Whereas the installation of monuments will take place throughout the summer of 2024 in Eastern and Central Canada, and whereas the Ambassador of Ireland to Canada, Eamon McKee, is an avid historian of the Irish in Canada and enthusiastic supporter of this project, whereas the entire cost of shipping, production, and installation of the Bronze Shoes Memorial in McDonald Gardens Park, if agreed to, will be covered by the fundraising efforts of the Bytown Famine Monument Committee, whereas McDonald Gardens Park is a park cherished by the residents of Lower Town. Frederick Gage Todd, a noted Canadian landscape architect, is recognized for designing some of the country's best urban parks, including Assiniboine Park in Winnipeg, Beaurig Park in St. John's, Newfoundland, and the National Battles Park, the Plains of Abraham in Quebec City. Whereas the McDonald Gardens Park is designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and installation of such a monument will require a heritage permit. And whereas the public consultation on the park's proposed heritage conservation plan is imminent, and whereas it would be beneficial to provide residents, including those of Lower Town, of the city and of the Irish diaspora in Ottawa, to have an opportunity to express their views of an installation of a memorial. And whereas the Built Heritage Committee is the committee responsible for advising and assisting Council on matters related to Part 4 and 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Therefore, be it resolved that the following motion be referred to the Built Heritage Committee meeting on May 14th, 2024 for review and recommendation to Council on May 15th, 2024. Be it resolved that Ottawa will participate in the Bronze Shoes project by facilitating the erection of the Irish Famine Grave Monument within McDonald Gardens Park or other location as deemed appropriate as a restoration of the memory of the victims of the Great Irish Famine, whose remains lie in Ottawa, and as a space to contemplate humanity's capacity for compassion and resilience. Be it further resolved that staff be directed to work with the Bytown Famine Monument Committee to resolve details such as installation location, details, required permits and maintenance and liability, and be further resolved that while careful to preserve the heritage attributes and facility of McDonald Gardens Park for the citizens of Ottawa, the memorial will serve a number of purposes: to thank Canada for its response to the Irish humanitarian disaster, and to recognize the particularly heroic efforts of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Wendat First Nations, and other first responders who received the unprecedented waves of famine refugees suffering from an unknown disease of an often fatal effect, and even at the cost of their own lives. To remember the victims of the Irish famine who arrived in Bytown, and to recall the great humanitarian disaster that reached Canadian shores. To celebrate the resilience of the human spirit in the face of disaster, that though 20,000 Irish died, 19,000 survived and prospered with the gift of hope and new beginning in Canada. To enrich the public experience of the existing city park by introducing sobering reminder of the original purpose of the site as a resting place through innovative design. To create a space for contemplation on ground hallowed by the city's history and the remains who lie there. To create an inspirational symbol of the power of compassion, hope, and opportunity to transform the lives of those who arrive on a stranger's shore. Would you like me to read it in Gaelic?
Please do.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Conseillère Plante?
Oui, merci beaucoup. So before I begin, I just want to give a shout out to the Friends of McDonald Gardens Park in Lower Town. Myself and the mayor had visited it when he did his ward tour, I believe it was last summer, and we were quite impressed with all the work that the residents put into this location. It's a wonderful spot in the heart of Lower Town with very historical significance. I also want to thank the heritage staff that worked very closely with Councillor Kavanagh and Councillor King on the motion. This is obviously a very important heritage aspect. As Vice Chair of the Heritage Committee, we really want to make sure that the heritage of the city and everything it encompasses comes through, no matter where you live in the city. I do believe bringing it back to heritage is the right thing to do to allow for full community participation and consultation. And I do want to emphasize I have received correspondence from the community for and against the current location. We will sort of be able to work out those details at the committee stage. There is many amazing spots commemorating the Irish history of Ottawa. In the Lower Town area, we have St. Bridget's, for example. We have St. Patrick Street, St. Andrew Street, etc. And I look forward to having this discussion both with the residents and staff. You know, anytime we can talk about the history of the Irish, and that also includes councillors with Nickelback tattoos, I think it's a good win for everyone. Merci beaucoup.
Merci. Okay, is the motion carried? Notices of motion, Councillor Tierney.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whereas the Ottawa Race Weekend is scheduled for May 24th to May 26th, 2024, and the Health and Fitness Expo included as a two-day event being held at Aberdeen Pavilion and Lansdowne Park for the second year in a row, whereas the Expo is also the site of the race kit pickup on Friday, May 24th and Saturday, May 25th, and whereas the Ottawa Race Weekend has requested the City of Ottawa waive the cost to park in the City Hall garage as part of encouraging participants to utilize transit to get to Lansdowne Park to obtain their race kits, whereas implementing free evening and weekend parking at City Hall during the race weekend would result in an estimated $3,000 in foregone parking revenue and thus reduce the contributions to the parking reserve fund. Therefore, it be resolved that City Council approve free parking at Ottawa City Hall. Parking garage located at 110 Laurier Avenue will be provided from Friday, May 24th at 6 p.m. until Sunday, May 26th at 9 p.m. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whereas the Association of Municipalities of Ontario annual conference and annual general meeting will take place the week of August 18th to the 21st of 2024 in Ottawa, during which elections for AMO's Board of Directors will be held. And whereas since 2018, Councillor Riley Brockington has represented the City of Ottawa on the AMO Board of Directors as a director in the Regional and Single Tier Caucus. And whereas since 2022, Councillor Brockington, in addition to serving on the Board of Directors, was elected Chair of the Regional and Single Tier Caucus and serves on the AMO's Executive Council. Whereas during Councillor Brockington's tenure with AMO, he has sought the opinion from city staff on a number of subject matter issues, advocated strongly for the City of Ottawa on key priorities, hosted the first ever caucus-wide virtual session with AMO members, AMO staff, and members of City Council, champions the City of Ottawa to host major AMO conferences, such as the annual AGM, and passionately supports AMO's work on behalf of Ontario's municipalities. Whereas AMO's call for nominations for the 2024-2026 AMO Board of Directors opened in April 2024 and closes in June 2024, and Councillor Riley Brockington has expressed his interest to stand for re-election to the board as a director in the Regional and Single Tier Caucus, and whereas a council resolution of support is required in order for Councillor Brockington to stand for this office, and whereas AMO provides partial reimbursement of directors' travels expenses in accordance with their board executive volunteer expense reimbursement policy, and any cost of the members' participation over and above those reimbursed by AMO will be paid by the council administration budget. Therefore, be it resolved that Ottawa City Council approves the nomination of Councillor Riley Brockington to stand for re-election for the position of Director, Regional and Single Tier Caucus on the AMO Board of Directors for the 2024-2026 term.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Brown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Whereas the Association of Municipalities of Ontario annual conference and annual general meeting will take place August 18th to 21st, 2024 in Ottawa, during which elections for the AMO's Board of Directors will be held. And whereas AMO's call for nominations for the 2024-2026 AMO Board of Directors opened in April 2024 and closes in June 2024, and Councillor Catherine Kitts has expressed her interest to stand for election to the board as a director in the Regional and Single single-tier caucus. And whereas a council resolution of support is required in order for a member of council to stand for this office, and whereas AMO provides partial reimbursement of directors' travel expenses in accordance with their board executive volunteer expense reimbursement policy, and any other costs of the members' participation over and above those reimbursed by AMO will be paid by the council administration budget. Therefore, be it resolved that Ottawa City Council approves the nomination of Councillor Catherine Kitts to stand for election for the position of Director, Regional and Single Tier Caucus on the AMO Board of Directors for the 2024 to 2026 term.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Menard.
Thank you very much, Mayor. This motion is on hydro-wire burial on Bank Street, whereas Bank Street is designated as a traditional main street in the official plan, and this designation is among the OP's intensification target areas and design priority areas. And whereas the city is undertaking a full integrated renewal of Bank Street from Old Ottawa South, Billings Bridge, Riverside to Walkley Road, including underground infrastructure and utilities, and this represents a once-in-a-75-year opportunity to achieve economies of scale. And whereas Bank Street, Riverside to Ledbury is a mixed-use area with significant development potential, businesses, transit stops, and is being redesigned to better facilitate pedestrian activity, traffic safety, and bicycling, and whereas the required 5-meter development setback from overhead hydro lines translates into a loss of development potential in some areas, and therefore a loss of development-related revenue and foregone taxable property assessment potential. Whereas there are currently new developments that are being planned for 1330, 1335, 1400 Bank, and other areas that could benefit from buried hydro wires, making this an opportune moment for burial. Whereas there is more intensification that has been revealed through the comprehensive zoning bylaw update planned along Bank Street and significant business frontages on this corridor. Whereas this proposed hydro burial would comply with the direction in the new official plan. Whereas the additional cost of hydro burial will be an additional future capital project asked subject to council approval. Whereas opportunities for resilience in the grid don't come along often, and Ottawa has been seeing more windstorms, power outages, and repairs required. Therefore, be it resolved, the council requests staff to investigate and include hydro wire burial along select sections of Bank Street in the renewal area, subject to project scope, estimates, and funding to be confirmed. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Menard. I don't believe there are any other notices of motion, so a motion to introduce bylaws. Councillor Bradley.
That the bylaws listed on the agenda under motion to introduce bylaws, 3 readings be read and passed.
Is that carried? Carried. Confirmation bylaw. Councillor Bradley.
That the following bylaw be read and passed to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting of May 1st, 2024.
Is that carried?
Carried.
Inquiries. Councillor Gower.
Thank you. There have been recent incidents of serious dog bites and attacks, in response to which charges and muzzle or leashing orders have been issued under the Animal Care and Control Bylaw by Bylaw and Regulatory Services. Under that bylaw, dogs that have bitten or attacked a person or domestic animal without provocation are deemed vicious. How can we better inform the public about safety issues associated with such dogs? The City of Toronto has introduced a strategy that includes an online directory and other web information, as well as a requirement for signage notifying the public about a vicious dog. Can staff review the feasibility of implementing similar strategies for Ottawa?
Thank you, Councillor Gower. Are there any other inquiries? Motion to adjourn. Councillor Bradley.
That the proceedings of the City Council meeting of May 1st, 2024 be adjourned.
Is that carried? Thank you, everyone. Merci beaucoup.
Allô,
Check,
allô?
check, check. Hello?
Oui, ça marche?
I feel like I'm further away than I normally am. Like am I, yeah, like I'm closer to the backdrop than normal. There we go. Is that better? Yeah. Sorry, you have to refocus. Do you want me to hold up a white piece of paper?
Good afternoon, bonjour à tous. My name is Kendra Titley and I will be your moderator. Je m'appelle Kendra Titley et je serai l'animatrice de ce point de presse. I will now invite each agency in alphabetical order to ask their questions. You may ask one question with a follow-up. Par ordre alphabétique, j'invite maintenant chaque organisme à poser une question et une question de suivi. We'll now start with CBC Ottawa, Elise Skura.
Hi, Elise.
Hi there. My questions today are about the Mooney Bay sledding hill, which was obviously quite divisive today. And I just wondered, Mr. Mayor, if I could ask you, what do you think this says about this issue? Is it a fiscal issue more than it is a safety issue?
First of all, I'm going to kind of gently and tongue-in-cheek correct you because it's not a sledding hill. Right?
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's a hill. But first and foremost, it's a safety issue. And if it's not safe for people to be on the hill, we have a responsibility and a duty to make sure that people are not using the hill. Secondly, I think it is a fiscal issue. My expectation, and from everything I've heard and from the professional advice of our team, we're not going to find a solution that will provide a safe place for people to toboggan and sled that doesn't cost a lot of money that we could invest elsewhere. So I expect we're going to do this study. We'll see what the study yields. It's going ahead now, which is fine, but I expect that the study is going to show us that there isn't an affordable solution. We have limited resources and we want to spend them the best way possible. And then that'll be the end of it. And it could have been the end of it today. So I don't think it's a big difference either way. And I know everybody, wants to make sure we're providing as many opportunities as possible for people to enjoy winter. I just didn't think this was the best way to do it.
Thanks very much. And to follow up on that, Mr. Chenier, we just heard from the mayor that he doesn't think, based on his conversations with staff, that there is a viable solution that would be affordable. What do you think are the prospects of coming up with an option that is less than, $5 million or so?
There's certainly a huge challenge there. We've been looking at this since 2017 and probably even before that because there have been accidents there. And this is a situation where a hill was built and then a whole bunch of things grew up around it. And all of those other things are now entrenched as a community expectation as well. So finding a balance between 8 weeks of sledding and the rest of the year on this hill is going to be a real challenge, and to do it at an affordable, reasonable price is going to be even more challenging.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. We'll now go to Arthur White-Crummy at CBC Radio.
Thanks. This will be for the mayor. I'm, interested in talking about your budding relationship with Premier Ford. It seems like there's obviously been all of these meetings recently, and I'm just interested in asking you how your relationship has changed over these past few weeks. Is it merely a working relationship, or have you developed any kind of a personal friendship? And how important is it for you to continue to build that relationship going forward?
I think it's part of my job to have a good relationship with the provincial government and with the Premier of Ontario because there are so many unique challenges that we face as a city, and we need the provincial government's support. So from the time that I became mayor, I set out to have a strong working relationship with Doug Ford and his team. The Premier reached out to me the day after the election, and we had a great phone call, and We've tried to stay in regular contact since then. And we've worked together on resolving a number of issues, and we're going to continue working together on resolving issues. And for me, I also have a good working relationship with the federal Liberal government. And I met with the Prime Minister 2 weeks ago, and I regularly meet with members of his cabinet and local MPs. So I see that as my job, to have a great relationship with the Premier of Ontario and his government, and a great relationship with the Prime Minister of Canada and his government, because we need support from both levels of government to address the unique challenges that we're facing.
And this will be for the city manager. I just wanted to ask, how strong are your relationships right now with senior bureaucrats at the provincial level? And how useful is it for you to have this relationship at the political level to cut through any resistance that you might meet there?
Thanks very much for the question. I think the relationships at both levels, looking at administration and a political level, are extremely important in terms of achieving the priorities that we have here at the city that are set by council. Coming through the Ottawa-Ontario deal was really critical for us as an administration. It strengthened the relationships that we have at the provincial level, such that, and I'm going to say in the past, we could pick up the phone, we could get answers, but even more so now, which is great. And having, I'm going to say, the mayor strengthen his relationship with the premier has also been really good as we come through this. So very positive.
Thank you. Nous allons maintenant à Charles-Antoine Gagnon, à la droite.
Charles-Antoine Gagnon, le droit. Hello, everyone. Question for the mayor. I was listening to the meeting with the police service in Ottawa. The whole meeting was held in English only, in writing and orally. This is not something new, but it was only in English. We thought that we were in Edmonton or somewhere else. Do you think this is acceptable? I didn't participate in that meeting. It's a concern for me. Ottawa is a bilingual city. We're supporting the French-speaking community within Ottawa. I think we should be able to work in both languages throughout the meetings. Maybe we could try to find a solution so that the police service meetings can be held differently. We'll have to talk to the chief of police. I think they speak French. Some member of their teams are bilingual. They do speak French. Let's see if it's possible to add on French during the meeting in the future. If it's possible, actually, I hope this is possible. Follow-up question? What would be a solution such as that meeting entirely in English don't happen again? This is actually the first time I'm made aware of this situation. I will talk to the chief of police, and maybe we will have a solution for the next meetings. Thank you so much. Frédéric Pépin, Radio-Canada. Mayor Sutcliffe, I would like to come back to the Mooney Bay Hill.
It could have been the end of it today if we would have voted no, not to invest and not to faire plus de recherche. Mais les gens l'utilisent encore, cette côte-là. L'hiver dernier,
But people are still sledding on that hill last winter. Once more, it could be the end. Maybe the study will say it's too expensive to move forward. But residents will keep on using Mooney Bay Hill. There could be other incidents. In your view, what's the future? And I will ask the same question to Mr. Chénier. I think we do have some practical solutions. I'm concerned. We know that right now, it's not safe on Mooney Bay Hill. There's some risks with this activity. I don't want residents to use a hill that is not deemed safe for winter sport. We have to make sure that if it's not safe enough, we will be posting it, make it clear, and that it will not be recommended to slide down this hill. I don't know if you can complement the answer. You will be financing a study. Do you think that we will learn new information? You seem pretty convinced that it will be costly, complex. Do you think that we have a solution? I'll make a difference between finding a solution and finding an economical solution. I think that one solution could modify partially part of the Mooney Bay Hill. How much is going to cost? This is the big question. Because the hill is so long, and if you visit it, you can actually slide on every side of that hill. This will be quite a challenge to find a solution, to have a safe sledding section, and that we will not have issues on the other side of the hill. Is it possible? We don't know. We will look into the different options, ask comments from specialists. What worries me is possibly the cost that will possibly be quite high to have a satisfactory answer.
Ceci conclut le point de presse d'aujourd'hui. Thank you.